these are my 5 audience members. So, for my research paper, I did it on the career of behavioral therapists. And so the tasks and activities that behavioral therapists perform include creating and applying individualized treatment plans, which are basically assessing a kid and then deciding what kind of therapies are going to work best for that child. They also assist the client in acquiring language, social, and academic skills. That's kind of geared really towards autistic kids, which is the field that I explored the most. And then they also work to create and follow up on age-appropriate milestones. And that goes along age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate. They're different things in this field because you're going to have a kid who's 3 years old, but they're autistic, so they're more going to be socially, probably developmentally close to like a 1-year-old. But for other milestones, they're going to be higher up. So it's really important that you assess each child individually. So college courses and majors that are really useful for this career are social work, child development, child advocacy, psychology, and then education. My major is communication studies, leadership, and advocacy. So my major is kind of outside of that, but because of the advocacy piece, it fits in. And then my minor actually makes up for that experience. So physical demands and working conditions. According to the Minnesota Autism Center, which is actually where I just got hired, their physical demands are 25 to 100 pounds, and they say that mostly because when we're working in the centers, you're going to have kids who are aggressive or children who just get very emotionally upset very easily, and so it's important to be able to physically restrain children, and so that's why they say about those weights. And then as far as like settings and working conditions, mostly you're in an office setting. For me, we're going to be in like a clinical setting, but you can also go out of that setting and go into children's homes. You can also go into schools. It kind of depends on how the referral came in. So if the referral is from like a child's family and you're working individually with a child or their family, then you're more likely to you're good. You're more likely to go into a child's home if their family hired you, but if they come in from a referral like via the school, then you're probably more likely to go into the school. It just depends on the referral. So then required knowledge. Obviously you should have a knowledge of autism and the spectrum if you're going into behavioral therapists for autistic children. It's going to be the same if you're going into like Down syndrome. You'd want to know a little bit about Down syndrome. And then also a general knowledge of child development and behavioral sciences. So behavioral sciences can include psychology. They can include psychological statistics is actually one that you can use. You can use a few advocacy classes, but you have to be careful at which ones you choose because advocacy is different from behavioral sciences. So, and then you also, like one of the requirements that they put for, at least for the Minnesota Autism Center, is you need a bachelor's degree with at least 2,000 hours of experience to be certified by the state. And then you also, or you can have a master's degree and then you don't need any experience. So the hiring practices, when I applied for my position, it was pretty cut and dry. I went to a career expo where the Minnesota Autism Center was there and looking for people. And I went and I talked to the hiring representative for a little bit, and then she handed me an application, and I actually decided I wanted the job right away, and so I filled it out at home and then called my mom and kind of freaked out slightly, and she was like, well, if you want it, you should go turn it in. So I went and I turned it in right away, and then from there, the woman was like, okay, we'll be in touch, and I called my mom again, and I was like, that was really anticlimactic. Was that supposed to happen? And she was like, no, it's okay. But they actually emailed me the very next day and said that they would be interested in interviewing me. So we set that up for a Skype interview on Wednesday, and then after that interview, again, they just said that they would get back in touch with me by the end of this week, actually. And they contacted me the Thursday right after that and said that they would offer me the position. But then after that, too, it involved a lot of, like, turning in paperwork and making sure that I got former employees to verify the number of hours that I worked that fits into that 2,000 hours of experience. So that was the hiring process. And then starting wages, they are kind of all over the board. It depends on if you're working for a clinical setting or if you're working for a like a private practice or kind of where you're working. They can start at $24,000 and then go up to $52,000 as far as salaried positions per year. And then most positions that I looked at also offer full-time benefits.
Okay, so like at a school, like
Yeah.
if you were a behavioral therapist who worked for a school, like how much would you make?
You would probably make in the middle range. Like you'd probably
Okay.
make, I'd say around like 36, maybe a little bit higher because the schools are state funded.
Okay.
So yeah. And then advancement opportunities. This was kind of my favorite part that drew me towards this career because you have a lot of room to like grow. So what I was told is that starting as a behavioral therapist, you're trained right away, so you can go in and not know anything about behavior or applied behavioral sciences. You just would know obviously about what I don't want to say disability, but what field you're going into. So for me, it would be autism. So knowing a bit about that, but then getting trained specifically in the therapies. So then you would be a behavioral therapist for about a year, potentially more, potentially less. It just depends on each person. And then they'll start training you actually to become a lead therapist, which that basically means that behavioral therapists report to lead therapists. But if you become a lead therapist, then you oversee all of the cases that you're being reported to. And then from there, it varies on timeline depending again on where you work, but from there you can move up to a center manager, and that just means basically you manage all the lead therapists in that center, like that specific area. But from then you could advance even to become a program director, which they're a lot less hands-on. They're kind of outside of the actual process, and they're more in charge of the county. So they'll look at, like, the center that I'm working at is Eden Prairie. So they'll look at Eden Prairie and the other counties that are within Carver or Hennepin, and they'll manage all of those and make sure that the entire program's functioning like that. So, and then current job listings. My job listing has been taken, but there are openings at the Minnesota Autism Center right now in all 9 of their statewide facilities. So, yeah.
Woo!